Welcome into the latest ESPN headline. I'm Prim Siripipat alongside our NFL insider, Dan Graziano. Well, doctors say that they are recommending JPP not play for the rest of the season. This is according to our very own Adam Schefter. And Giants defensive end Jason Pierre-Paul injured his shoulder. That was back on November 10th. So looks like he's going to be out for the rest of the season. He's dealt with all sorts of injuries this season. Just what's your take on how he's performed this year?
Kind of like the team, it's a little bit of a lost season for Pierre-Paul. He had back surgery in June, missed the whole preseason, all of training camp, and admittedly was never himself in the first half of the season. But he was starting to get there, and he had his second sack of the year in that Week 10 game against the Raiders. But on the very next play, he hurts his shoulder. He was able to play the next couple of weeks, but not since, and the pain has become too much for him. Talking to Jason Pierre-Paul over the last couple of weeks, he wants to play. He does not want to be seen by his teammates as a guy who shut it down, and he'd like to be out there. But he said the pain in the shoulder is keeping him from doing what he wants to do.
You look at his list of injuries. In Week 4, well, back in training camp, he was recovering from back surgery. Then in Week 4, it was a knee injury. And then in Week 10, it was a shoulder injury. So not to make any assumptions, but sometimes when you suffer one, you can overcompensate for that, and that causes other injuries. Just a couple of years ago, I mean, he was fourth in the league with 16.5 sacks. His defense was really dominant with Justin Tuck and also JPP. What has happened to this defense?
Well, it has eroded. I mean, a lot of the Giants' roster depth has eroded over the last couple of years, and they haven't been able to find guys in the pipeline on either line, offensive line or defensive line. And the Giants face a very significant offseason in terms of trying to replenish a lot of that quality roster depth. But when they were great, when they were winning Super Bowls, it was that four-man pass rush. Justin Tuck and Jason Pierre-Paul a couple years back with Osi Umenyiora coming in as part of the rotation. And I think they need to get back to building depth there. Now, Pierre-Paul is probably a big part of their future. He's one more year left on his contract, and so they have to figure out whether to extend him, sign him long-term, let him play out next year the way they did this year with wide receiver Hakeem Nicks, which hasn't gone well, by the way. So this is a guy who now they thought was a cornerstone piece for them, that now they have questions about him in terms of his physical health.
Right now, the Giants, they were eliminated from playoff contention. And your Big Blue report, you were talking about what they are playing for right now. And Victor Cruz mentioned that this is not a situation that they're used to. They just kind of have to play for each other. What's the mentality in that locker room right now? Because really, what are they playing for?
They're playing for pride, and they openly admit that's all there's left to play for. They can't make the playoffs, but they want to put a representative effort forward in these final 3 games. We see it around the league. There are teams every year that fall out of it and quit, and coaches get fired and those kinds of things. Giants do not want to be one of those teams. They haven't been this year. Even after starting 0-6, they didn't fold up. You know, they kept the energy level high, and they're doing that this week. They're fired up about playing the Seahawks, who are 11-2 and the best team in their conference, and they think, you know, if they can show something to people who are watching the game, the people will say, oh, that's impressive that that's not a team that rolled over.
Certainly a tough challenge for the Giants as they welcome the Seattle Seahawks. Keep it logged on to ESPN.com as well as ESPNNewYork.com for all your needs on the Giants. Be sure to check out Dan on NFL Insiders. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. For Dan Graziano, I'm Prim Siripipat with your latest ESPN headline.